So you guys didn't know you're getting the B team. But I was a JV coach, so I like JV a little bit better than varsity anyway. I'm going to try to take you through a little journey, if possible, through pictures from an iPhone that I took over the summer and have continued to take. The journey began here, which is why you have the nice GoPro picture of the Clinton School of Public Service. In 2007, as Lindsay said, I was a high school teacher and coach in Tampa, and I was doing some research around different institutions and different people that were doing different things in the realm of public service and leadership and what that looked like, and I came across the Clinton School of Public Service. And I looked at their curriculum and I really liked it. I thought it was really cool how about 50, even more than 50% of the curriculum was hands-on, was in the field, was doing stuff, practical as opposed to theoretical. And so I stole some of their ideas, as many good people do, and did it at the high school level and had practicum teams just like they do here at the high school level. And one thing led to the next, and Ann Speed, who was the director of admissions at the time, said, "You should apply to this school." And I never gave it much thought. I knew I needed more education, but I didn't want to jump through the hoops of just getting a master's degree for the fun of it. So I came here, and it changed my life. And so the one thing that, and I think some of my classmates will tell you, when you watch the video from the Clinton School on the cover, or on the front web page, and which is now changed, President Clinton's out in the rain and he's dedicating the library, and he said, "The thing I want most is for people to come to this library, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, to see that public service is noble." And that video gives you chills, and gave me chills, still does to this day, from front to back on what this school was about. And so the noble word sort of came to us not only through that, but then Steve Clark, who is our founder and chairman, I met him a couple years ago, and he said, "I just really like this word noble. There's something about it." And I started putting two and two together, and I said, well, I think President Clinton uses that word too. And that's where we came up with the word noble. And just the fact, and we added impact to that, because we really were concerned with, just noble by itself doesn't really mean much to us, but noble impact is where we want to be. So in January of this year, this poll came out from the Gallup student poll. And it said that in elementary school, and they do about 20 different questions with kids all around the nation. They've polled about 350,000 kids. And I had the chance to poll our kids yesterday. And they didn't know it was part of this, but this is a cool one. And it talked about elementary school and then middle school and high school as far as the engagement dropping. And this was really the impetus behind putting together what we wanted to do with the focus of engagement. How do we engage people? How do we engage high school kids? If it's at a 44% rate now, what can we do to add value? Not how do we change the system, what can we do to add value? And so we thought about that for a little bit and said, well, how about if we do summer institutes where it doesn't necessarily go along with the school day, but let's do summer institutes and see what it looks like, and see if we can create a curriculum around public service and entrepreneurship that engages kids. Because the one argument I'd like to make with anybody is that I think kids are born entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are creative. They take risks. Kids do that until you tell them not to. So I actually think that from a creativity standpoint, entrepreneurialism speaks to kids in a very high level. As they age, in the system that we live in, I think we take that away, whether that be through standardized testings or what have you. So we wanted to think about what would be the skills of entrepreneurialism, then factored with the attitude or avenue of public service. And so we brought them all to the Clinton School River Market campus and threw them into this big mesh on day one of that they had to pitch why their glass of water was better than the other team's glass of water. And so they did that, and they found themselves in groups. See all these, they're all in the pictures now, so yeah. So we put them in teams and had them come up with different ideas around how their glass of water was going to be better than the other group's glass. And then they got up and they pitched this without any training. So if you think about, and as a basketball coach and a former football coach, I learned a lot on how to work with kids outside of the classroom, which then translated to me inside the classroom. So John Wooden uses a whole part whole method. So he puts everybody out on the court, shows them the play, and then breaks it down individually, and then they do it again. So what we really wanted to do is start them out in teams, and then break that down from an individual and group in twos process, and then put them back into teams the following week. So we took this individual, group, and team model, and if you go to any good football practice, that's exactly what you get. So that was the second day. And what we asked them on the second day, after the first day of pitching in teams, we asked them to really think about what public service as entrepreneurs looks like, but also pitching themselves, really understanding who they are in context to public service and entrepreneurship. The one big belief that we had is we had sort of a process of, and they can probably tell you even better than I now, hopefully, but we start off with who, and then we go to why, and then we go to how, and then we go to where, and then we go to what. And a lot of people start with what, and they forget about the who, and they forget about the how. And that was one thing that we never wanted to do, because our curriculum is all about the students, and the more that it can be student-led and driven is where we want to be. In all reality, if I'm, and I hate that I'm even lecturing right now, but lecturing is not where we want to be. We want to involve kids. We want them to do things. So we want to be seen more so as facilitators or mentors or coaches. So what we really want to do, and as they continued to pitch, and you can see Jeremy down front, you had 60 seconds to pitch. So he would give a 10-second signal that when it was done, you were done. So whether you had yourself in 60 seconds or not was up to you, but we tried to give them through a process of how they got to know themselves, who they were, whether that be introducing themselves through their first name or going right into a story or a statistic or whatever it is, but it then carried over to the team concept. So they did this, and then we actually, that same week, gave them hard skills in marketing, in branding, in understanding the message and the importance behind that, because whoever controls the message controls everything. And if you're not controlling your message, somebody else will. And so what is the message behind you as a person? Then what is your message as a group? And then what is your message as a team? So we really got to introduce them to concepts and then let them run with it in their own light. So one of the things we did, I think this was on day 3, you all can tell me, but I think on day 3 we introduced them to the anatomy of a good interview. And we wanted to marry 3 different concepts of curriculum. One was Startup Weekend, which is out of Seattle, Washington, and they have over 200 events around the globe. And in 54 hours, you start on a Friday and you end on a Sunday, and you pitch your company on a Sunday with people that you just met on Friday. So, and it's become a very powerful situation, and now people are getting significant funds coming out of those Sundays to then go on with their businesses. And we can talk about incubators and accelerators later on. But the Startup Weekend approach, right, the urgency of public service, I think really needs to be talked about from an entrepreneurialism aspect. And then the Stanford design curriculum, which goes through the design process, the empathy process, the ideating process. But we wanted to switch that a little bit up with the pitch. And then the thought processes that come out of the Clinton School. And so we said, well, go out in the River Market and interview people. And interview people about what they believe issues in Little Rock to be. And so that's what they did. And so this is Wyatt and Victoria, and they're out there where the fountains are. I think probably everybody would probably want to play in those fountains as opposed to interviewing people, but they interviewed people that day, and it was hot. I like this kid in the background too, it's awesome. So they went out and they interviewed people, and they came back and really, to me, were developing skills to interview somebody. And you really get to know yourself a lot in the process of interviewing somebody. So then I asked classmates, my former classmates, to be a part of what we were doing. So selfishly, I really wanted to get my class back together, because my class, I think, is an awesome class, but also to engage other Clinton School graduates and even current students, because what we learn here, to me, is something that is not taught anywhere else. And to be able to then teach that and bring it all upstream to a younger generation, that's actually going to be making policy someday, that's actually going to be part of the solution someday. We wanted to bring all that upstream. And so this is Ashley Davis, and she was our class president. She's right there. And she was helping them understand going through the process of who, why, how on their pitch. And then we actually even had Jaden Barnes. He actually wanted to give a presentation on the third day. He created a whole video one night. He said, yeah, I spent 5 hours last night creating this really cool video about noble impact. And this was totally not what we even thought would happen out of this, but it was some byproducts of good cohesion. So then we had a word wall where when we introduced new terms, we wanted to put them up there where it would stick in with the kids and understand language and the importance of language. So the language of entrepreneurship, the skills of entrepreneurship, and from a metaphorical aspect, when I think of public service and entrepreneurship, I feel like, when bands play down here at the Rev Room, they bring in their big van, and then behind that van is like a little U-Haul with all their equipment. And so in the van lies the people, right? The who, and why they're doing what they're doing, and how they're doing what they're doing. And then in that little U-Haul is really what they're doing, or what they're going to use to do what they do. So I see the van as public service, and the little U-Haul is entrepreneurship. So the entrepreneurial skills needed to then do public service. So we brought in more classmates to talk about different aspects of public service. This is Ben Kaufman. He's the head of social metrics at Bancorp, Southern Bancorp here in town, and wanted to use it as a networking opportunity. So had the kids get in the habit of asking for business cards, understanding who these people were and how maybe they could help them down the line, especially in this community. So we would start every day off with a quote or a question, and it would get minds going. We sort of started this, called this sort of the startup process. And, what is your favorite place in the world? And getting to know the who behind everybody else. So they could tell you, hopefully in that first week, we were building culture. Our goal was to build culture, especially as they moved on into team processes. So the second week began, and we introduced them to organizations from around the local area, from our house to Little Rock Urban Farming, who we did a project with this morning, to Oxford American. And even the Children's Library, the new Children's Library, the Hillary Rodham Clinton Library off of 12th Street. And so we then threw them into teams where they partnered with organizations and then had the ability to use these entrepreneurial skills, hopefully that we instilled in them the week before, and the ability to pitch ideas that would then be possible solutions for these organizations. So we introduced them to all these organizations. They then had to come up with a idea for a solution around a challenge or an issue that they were faced with. So they really got into the crux of the problem, which to us was very significant, not only just trying to find solutions, but what is really the problem. And we got into it was a very interesting classroom discussion that we got into even in day 2 or 3 was about homelessness. Is homelessness the problem? Or is there more of a root problem that then leads to homelessness? And it was fascinating to see the kids start to really understand that, well, maybe homelessness isn't the problem. Maybe there's more to that problem than just homelessness. And so a lot of critical thinking skills and then creativity around what the solution may be. And then we actually went to the places the following day. So we actually did site visits. And going to the sites then gave them the bearing witness opportunity of what does this place look like? Who are we dealing with? What does the space look like? And it got a little bit more in depth of the problem and then possible solutions. And that's Jason Hamilton from Arkansas Commitment. And then we brought them back and they started to ideate. So let's throw out all ideas. The one key thing that we thought would be crucial was every voice should be heard. And then a lot of times every voice is not heard in idea processes. And so this was part of the design curriculum out of Stanford, that every idea goes up on the board, every sticky note, everyone gets heard and every idea gets seen. And then they ideated a little bit more. So this was Jordan's team, and they went above and beyond on some of the things. And then we even had our founder, Steve Clark, come in, and Steve Clark is the co-founder of Rockfish and has a company called ProPack in Northwest Arkansas. And we met each other a couple of years ago, and this is sort of the brainchild of Steve Clark on how do we put young adults in situations to solve problems, and that's why Noble Impact came about. But he was actually consulting with each team, and they can tell you some of them were sort of I guess I could use the word scared of Steve, but in a very good way, because he challenged them in places that they hadn't been challenged before about even the pitching process, and then how to actually get the message across to someone of a solution. I just like this picture because it shows one person. I think this is Christina, but all the ideation that was going on from start to finish, and all the sticky notes that were actually happening. So the process to us was actually bigger than the pitch, and so we really wanted to embrace the process on how the education happened. And then we brought in Nikki Hamilton, who was she's class 6 at the Clinton School, and she's actually at the foundation at Arkansas Children's Hospital, talking to them about fundraising. So what fundraising would look like in their solution. So then we practiced the pitches. So this was day 3, day 8, prior to the final pitch of day 10. So it was a 10-day process. And to give you a little bit more insight, we brought in 32 kids from 7 different high schools. So there was a significant process of culture building, not only within one high school, but within 7 different high schools, and different people coming to the table from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different races, from different religions. It really was a cool process to see happen. And this group was made up of 2 students from Hall High School and 2 students from Eastham. And then that's what it turned into. So the practice, the pitching, to the real deal. And the real deal obviously took place in somewhere like right here. And it was gracious of the Clinton School to really be a significant partner for us to have that space to do what we did. So I'll give you a little insight, and let's see if this works, but this was sort of the final deal of what they did.
Everyone.
Stand by. What's that? If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But this was the announcement of, and just, if we do get it to work, I want you to pay attention to the top left corner of those stairs for the excitement. Try it again.
In this room, all of our noble scholars, to congratulate next generation, so the judges have what is referred to as a rubric, and in that rubric is the lesson.
I'm just going to fast forward to one part that I'd like to see, and it's for us as possible. How about this? I'll stop it. But the thing I think for us that really threw it over the edge was when there was a question, and it was from Don Ernst, and asking about the process. So where is this marriage between public service and entrepreneurship? And Jordan got up and said, you know, if you would have asked me a week ago how I would have changed the world, I wouldn't have had that answer for you. And then he said, but now I understand that anybody can have the opportunity to change the world, no matter what race, no matter what class, no matter what size. And it was, that to me was the moment of, okay, maybe these 2 weeks did something. Maybe we were on the right track. And so this was one of the things that came out of a little sticky pad that I liked, but just the fact of them using the language now that we had instilled in them, the who and the why and the how and the where, and actually not even seeing the what on here, I thought was sort of interesting. But why we care, the next generation. And these are, you know, these are rising sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school. And so that led to where we are now, and we actually have a full-time course at Eastham. And so we actually I had them define public service and entrepreneurship on their own. And so they came up with their own conclusions to it, and now have been working over the past 2 months, and what just happened this past week is they pitched an idea to the CEO of eSTEM and then to the administration on why they should have a bring your own device to school policy, why they should have iPhones in classrooms, why they should have laptops and be able to use those in classrooms. This has been the biggest issue probably of this year and maybe last year, is how technology fits into high schools. And I think if you let students steer it and move it, that's probably where you need to be, because I think they know a little bit more about technology than we do these days. And so they ideated, right? They actually brought in the eSTEM CEO and asked and did the interviewing process again, right? So some of these kids were from the institute, and some of these kids actually just signed up for the class. So we have 24 total students, and we broke them down into different groups that then pitched their ideas and they interviewed different people. So this is the dean of students. They're asking what needs to be done. So this was this week. They came in, and this was the pitching process. So sort of like this, but in the classroom. And just to say something on that, I think design is a huge deal in education. And the one thing we will never be in is a classroom with desk behind desk and chair behind chair. It will never happen for us. And it will always either be in a circle or in groups where people can actually collaborate. And I think that when we get to that process, we'll get out of that industrialized age and really understand that design in classrooms is a huge deal in regards to how we teach. So this was the feedback after they pitched to everybody, and Mr. Bacon was giving them feedback as a whole entire group. Obviously a sense of accomplishment. They actually are pitching policy change. And if you put things on college resumes, I think that's something you should put on your resume, that you actually changed policy at your school. So the reason I say that is we want to put them in positions where they thrive not only individually, but also almost from a professional standpoint, that we're actually creating profiles of public service and portfolios of entrepreneurialism and public service. And I think with our curriculum, that's what we're doing. And this was actually, we had Chris from Little Rock Urban Farming come in and give a guest talk, and we have gone with him before now. Even today, we did a service project this morning, and we canvassed Hillcrest about an event that they're going to be throwing. So then the thought process of, can this work in elementary school? And a school reached out to us in Tampa, and they did this for summertime, and it was 4 days from 1:30 to 5:30 every day, as opposed to the 2-week intensive high school 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So how do we scale it down, and how do they solve problems? And so they pitched, and they pitched to their PTA, and they pitched to their parents. And the feedback we got was absolutely amazing. I really didn't know this was going to happen this year. It had nothing to do with elementary school. It was by accident that it happened, because we were totally focused on the high school aspect. And so these kids got up and pitched, and then we had, for this group alone, there was 80 kids, 2 sessions of 40, and we had 18 parents sign up then to be a part of this process throughout the year. So we didn't see this happening, but it actually engaged the parents further, which is actually a pretty significant aspect for schools today, is how do we engage parents. And then I had the opportunity to teach a 3rd grade class, which was totally outside my comfort zone. But I asked them the same question. I said, well, if you had iPads today, how would you use them? If every group had an iPad right now, how would you use them? And they came up with tons of ideas, and they linked their ideas to one another. These are 3rd graders, linked their ideas to one another, and they came up almost with a policy on what they were going to do. So it was fascinating. So the one thing for us is that how do we continue engagement? You know, this isn't a one-time shot. This isn't a one-time 2-week religious experience and then nothing else happens. So how do we continue engagement? How do these kids continue to be engaged throughout the year without just saying, all right, that was fun, let's do it another day? So we've engaged through our community partners back again. We were at the Children's Museum, Children's Library last week with Don Ernst, and now we're planning a Little Rock Urban Farming. This is a plug for them. October 19th, they're going to be doing an event at Little Rock Urban Farming for the community to raise money for Little Rock Urban Farming, and they're going to be doing everything, cooking, the whole 9 yards. I think they're going to be cooking, I'm not sure. And it's just another way to engage them. So the engagement process of outside of the classroom was really key to us. And so even the knowledge of what does a community garden look like, what does an urban farm look like. And so here's what I want, and this is your cue. What I did these past 3 weeks is I reached out to some friends around the nation. And I asked them in 3 different categories, or in 2 different categories, what are the qualities and skills of an entrepreneur? What are the qualities and skills of a public servant? And then I actually had the class, so 24 kids, what are the skills of public service and entrepreneurship? The 3 skills. So I'd like you to just take a second and give me what the top 3 skills, what you believe the top 3 skills on one side is of an entrepreneur, and on the other side is of a public servant. And so I'd like you just to take a minute, and hopefully everybody got a card. If you didn't get a card, just raise your hand and they would be glad to give you one. But they've already done this process, so. But the top 3 skills and qualities of an entrepreneur or the top 3 skills of a public servant. So I reached out to everybody from the CEO of Startup Weekend, Mark Nagar in Seattle, and he reached back right away. It's really interesting, and if you don't know the startup communities want to help people right away. It's an amazing community that wants to help each other move things forward, which I think what's going on in Little Rock right now around the project in Argenta and this is a really ripe situation for a startup community. So the first feedback that I got was from all the entrepreneurs. Even the CEO that started the Brandery and the CEO, Scott Case, who started Startup America Partnership out of Washington, D.C. And so I put all these skills together and made a word cloud. And so these are the, obviously, biggest to smallest on what people believe the skills of an entrepreneur to be. I polled about greater than 75 people. So perseverance and drive and hustle and honesty and passion and vision. Focus. Sometimes laser focus. So then I reached out to my former classmates and asked them to think of the top 3 qualities or skills of a public servant. And I got this. And so if you really look at the difference, it's significant. And it's almost alarming because this is telling you the difference between public service and entrepreneurship. Because, as our founder Steve says, words mean things, and they mean a lot of things. But when you see humility and listening and empathy and understanding as big words on this page, and drive and perseverance and hustle on this page, you can take away your own conclusions, but I think it's fascinating. But the most fascinating one, to me, will always be what the students have to say. And this was what they said. Now, keep in mind, the first one was just entrepreneurship. The second one was just public service. I asked them to define entrepreneurship separately. This was on a different day. And then I asked them to do public service on a different day. And then I actually put both of those words together on this one. That was from students. So you can see where high school minds are in regards to the marriage of public service and entrepreneurship. And it's actually great in all reality. And you never saw humility or humble on this one, which is fascinating to me, And then, we'll pick up all your cards and do yours, and then I'll make a word cloud and send it out to everybody. And I'll tweet it out. That's how I'll do it. But I really wanted you to do it because to see what you have on your cards compared to this, from the entrepreneurship, right? And it's fun, these are great. These are great qualities and skills. Don't get me wrong. Creative and honesty and follow through. And then going to listening being the biggest word of a public servant. I mean, if you want to talk to somebody that believes in listening, I think it's President Clinton. I think that's what he first says. He was first told that you have to listen before you tell a story. And those are the biggest 2 things. And we talked about that on day 1 and day 2 of the Institute, was how do you tell your own story? But not only that, how do you listen to other people? Because there's no way you're going to be able to serve to a capacity that needs to be unless you can first listen. So that's all I got. But I just want to say this absolutely would never happen without this school and the knowledge that comes out of this school, and then obviously with the staff that we put together. But there's no way that we do that without these guys back here, these guys and gals back here, because they have taken it under their wing, to actually be ambassadors for this program, to actually show up on a Saturday at 8:30 this morning, to then go canvass about an event that they want to throw for the community. We're not making them do anything. The only thing that we're phrasing is the fact that public service and entrepreneurship can be an opportunity as opposed to an obligation. And I think what's happened is, in our nation, at least from my experience as a high school teacher, this word community service has become apathetic. It's something I have to do. And in Florida, you have to get 100 hours. You have to graduate. But people like us, adults, should be giving the avenue, should be providing an avenue for kids to really do what they're passionate about and what they're really good at, maybe even what they can be the best in the world at. And doing public service with entrepreneurship skills, to me, is providing a service maybe that should be in every school across the nation. And what we're doing now is we're working on curriculum that hopefully we will be able to scale across the nation and for have it to be sustainable, both from a K level to a 12 level, all the way through. And I think it's feasible. I think it's possible. And so I leave you that quote. But thanks, appreciate it. I'm shocked that Don Ernst has a question.
Should I give
But
him the
I love
mic?
it. I love it.
Not so much a question as just an amazing compliment to your work, Chad, and for a lot of different reasons, but mainly because in some ways the content about what you all struggle with is irrelevant. There are a lot of silences in the educational lives of our children, in schools that were grounded and built in the 19th century that have fundamentally haven't changed. We are obsessed as a culture with this fetish about psychometrics, and that testing equals a fair and equal and just determination of intelligence, success, and achievement. What you all have managed to do is to struggle with that space. And frankly, there are few places in our educational discourse where this is happening. Sadly, but positively, that you have tried to create a space outside school. So in some ways, this is a new kind of public context out of school. But most important, you've struggled with, and I would fuss a little bit about that there is the danger, I think, of the market ideology and entrepreneurism washing over the equal and perhaps more important than ever in the history of this democracy, this important space we call public. The purpose of a public space is to create a public. And I worry deeply as we look at the divisions in our country today. We don't know how to talk to one another across these divides, these ideological differences. We have no space to do that. Witness what's going on in our democracy. So what you all are doing is so important. And I'm proud that the Clinton School of Public Service has joined with Mr. Clark and you all. And I just appreciate, but I also want to make public that this conversation is essential. And that, again, let's be reminded that the purpose of public schools are also to create a public. And public is different than the market values that undergird entrepreneurism, but it's this conversation that's vital, and I congratulate you, Chad. Thank you for your great work.
Thanks. And, you know, obviously it's not just my great work. I mean, bringing the Clinton School students, my fellow students, my fellow classmates, to the table has provided unbelievable wisdom and insight. And it's still something, you know, this is something I hope that we struggle with continually, because that's constant change. I mean, I'm still going to class, right? I'm going to Dean DePippa's class every Friday. It's the Foundations of Public Service. I want to continue to know what people think. You know, this is class 9 now. I want to know what they think. You know, if I don't know what they think, then I'm not progressing myself. And I think that puts us into a significant opportunity to learn more. You know, this public service space doesn't stop, right? By the way, if you want more of Don Ernst, 7:30 Boulevard Bread every morning. Coffee. But crazy insight from Don. Thanks.
This one over there. Question.
Say I could have yelled out. First off, I too wanted to say great job, Chad, and great job to the students and Katie, and you guys have done tremendous work over the last several months. And I kind of know the answer to this, but I thought it'd just be nice to share. But could you share a little bit about what the vision for kind of next steps for the upcoming year look like for Noble, and the kinds of student involvement and the kinds of, frankly, needs that you may have as well that those of us in the room, including some of our current students here at the Clinton School, might be able to take advantage of and join in on?
Sure. You know, right now we're really focused on how this curriculum looks and how we build it out, because I think that is where we're going to make that noble impact. I mean, we have to check ourselves too. Like, if we don't scout ourselves, that's the worst thing that we could possibly do. So scouting ourselves to say, how do we continue to make a noble impact in noble impact, right? So how do we do it ourselves? And right now we're developing curriculum. And hopefully over the next 3 months, we'll have a very nice, tight package of what curriculum looks like. Then we'll put that onto a curriculum designer, a very professional curriculum designer, and then get that done and then test it. And hopefully K through 12, if not just starting in the high school arena. I mean, it's a absolute unbelievable opportunity for us to be at eSTEM on a day-to-day basis, because in all reality, they are forming the curriculum. You know, and I don't know what other situation lends itself to this in the country to have student-led curriculum. You know, students should be a part of the curriculum. If you go to Eagle Rock School in Estes Park, teachers pitch curriculum to students. And if the students like it, you get your class. If the students don't like it, you don't get your class. It's called relevancy. And I think a lot of the stuff that we do now, it just isn't relevant. And you saw that a lot on engagement, you know. And one of the schools, sorry, and I'll get back to the vision, but one of the questions was, hey, how is your high school so good? This was a high school with great engagement. And the principal said, well, if you come to our school, you'll actually feel like you're in an elementary school. That was the answer. Like, we treat our school like an elementary school. But the vision is really curriculum-based right now. And then also the institutions that we do next year, Katie's in charge of that. And she's really putting a lot of muscle behind how do we refine what we did this year? How do we look back and have a lot of introspection and reflection on what we did, what worked, what didn't work, and really getting insight and advice from the scholars that we had. So creating another institution in Little Rock. So we'll stay in Little Rock. We'll probably have 2 institutes. Katie can speak better to this. Maybe 70 to 100 kids. And then the curriculum base right now. To really take that national approach on how do we get into a space to help people understand that we believe the marriage of public service and entrepreneurship is almost just as important, or maybe even more important, than math and English and history and all these things. How do we, because to me it not only connects a school, it connects a community. And the people that they're getting to meet along the way is awesome for us. Even going door to door today. And some of the kids saying, I've never done this before. I've never canvassed before. This is a little uncomfortable. They know who they are. This is a little uncomfortable, right? Ringing people's doorbells and having to pitch something. So continue to put them into situations where they can thrive. Does that a little bit? I don't know. Anthony, what you got?
What noble impact had did for me. On the second day, I was really nervous about public speaking. Then after the 2 weeks there, I am finally brave enough to do it right now. I'm still a little scared though.
It's all right.
But I've started participating more in class. Usually I don't put my hand up. Sometimes I did. But it was really amazing. I made a lot of friends. And I just want to say thank you, Chad and Katie.
Thanks, man. So if there's no more, I mean, it's always great to end with a student, but, you know, you almost have to think about this on a really deep level of, I became more comfortable publicly speaking, but I also raised my hand in class more. I'm more engaged. How does that really affect everything? Because I think that is a tremendous amount. And that's not us. That's collectively as a student group process and the comfortability and the support and the collaboration as opposed to competition. You know, this is a collaborative, interconnected world that we're all in. It will continue to be that. How do we use public service and entrepreneurship to push that forward? And that's hopefully what we'll continue to do. So, thanks.